We've been taught to be nice, to smile when disrespected, to give when we have nothing left, to stay quiet when others walk all over us. All our lives we've been told this is the right way to live, to be kind, to be patient, to be understanding. But what if this lesson, this virtue we call niceness, is the very thing that marks us as prey? What if strength doesn't come from a soft smile, but from knowing when to bare your teeth? What if respect doesn't come from making yourself smaller for others, but from knowing when to stand tall, to draw a line and to hold it? The hard truth is this: the world doesn't reward the person who gives endlessly, the one who is always agreeable, always accommodating. The world doesn't respect obedience or hesitation. It respects strength. It respects boundaries. It respects the hand that knows when to open and when to close. Today, we're going to expose this brutal reality. We're going to explore why being nice doesn't make you noble, it makes you a target. We'll uncover why kindness, when it's blind and desperate, can be used against you. And we'll learn from a man who understood this better than anyone, Niccolo Machiavelli. This is a lesson in strength, not cruelty, a reminder to protect your worth, set boundaries, and never forget where nice ends and self-respect begins. The myth of niceness. We grow up surrounded by a simple story. If you're nice, people will be nice to you. If you're kind, the world will reward you. If you give, others will give back. We're taught this from childhood, by parents, by teachers, by movies. The hero is always the one with a soft smile and an open hand. The villain is the one with sharp edges, and we accept this as the way the world works. But as we get older, reality shows a very different picture. We start noticing things. The person at work who is always quiet and helpful, they get overlooked when it's time for a promotion. The friend who always says yes, they're the first one called when someone needs a favor and the last one called when it's time to have fun. The one who gives too much, sooner or later, others just expect it. Not because they respect that person, but because it's easy to take from someone who doesn't say no. That's the hard truth about being nice. It doesn't make you special. It doesn't make people value you. It doesn't make them respect you. In many cases, it makes you invisible, or worse, it makes you a target. Why? Because niceness, when it becomes a habit, is not strength. It's surrender. It tells the world, I will accept whatever you give, and I won't complain. And in a world where strength is noticed and weakness is tested, that's a dangerous message to send. Machiavelli understood this long ago. In The Prince, he stripped away the illusions about how power really works. He said it openly: the world doesn't honor idealists or those too good to stand up for themselves. The world respects strength, strength of character, strength of will, strength of boundaries. The world doesn't reward those who always agree, those who try to make themselves smaller, quieter, or more agreeable. It respects those who stand firm, those who can walk into a room and make it clear that while they can give respect, they can also demand it. The myth of niceness is that it's a shield. In reality, it's an invitation for others to test you, to walk all over you, to take more and more until you have nothing left to give. The bitter truth is that kindness only works when it's balanced by strength, by knowing when to say no, when to walk away, when to stand tall, when to draw a line and make sure it's never crossed. The lesson here is simple but powerful. The world doesn't reward nice, it rewards those who respect themselves enough to command respect from others. Niceness can open doors, yes, but only when it is backed by strength. Without strength, it becomes a signal that you can be used, ignored, discarded. If you want to survive and thrive in this world, you must bury the myth that being nice is enough. You must accept this brutal reality. Being liked will never be as valuable as being respected. Being agreeable will never matter as much as being strong. Machiavelli gave us a warning, and we would be wise to listen. It's not cruelty that wins, it's strength. Not aggression for its own sake, but a strength rooted in knowing your worth, knowing your boundaries, knowing when to draw that line and enforce it. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember the person who gave too much and spoke too softly. The world remembers the person who refused to be ignored, refused to be used, refused to accept less than they deserve. That is the lesson. The myth of niceness must be put to rest, and in its place, we must raise the strength and the wisdom that this world truly respects. you lose your self-respect. The biggest cost of being too nice isn't that others walk over you, it's that you forget how to stand tall. You don't just lose opportunities, you lose a piece of yourself every time you swallow a no that needed to be said. Every time you laugh at a joke that humiliated you. Every time you stay quiet when you deserve to speak. That's how it starts. Not with a single moment, but with a series of small compromises. A yes when you meant no. An apology when you weren't in the wrong. An agreement to accept less than you deserve. Slowly, quietly, it chips away at you. Not just at your reputation, not just at how others treat you, but at how you see yourself when you look in the mirror. People don't respect those who don't respect themselves. They don't notice a voice that doesn't stand up for itself. The world has a way of pressing you, pressing harder and harder until you draw a line. If you don't draw it, no one will draw it for you. The pressure doesn't stop until you decide enough. Until you stand tall and accept this brutal truth, no one is coming to save your dignity except you. Machiavelli knew this. He understood that in a world that preys on weakness, strength isn't about aggression, it's about conviction. It's about knowing where you stand and making it clear that you won't be pushed any further. You can be kind, you can be fair, you can be loyal, but none of that can come at the cost of your own respect. The tragedy of being too nice isn't just that you lose battles, it's that you lose yourself. You forget how to recognize your own voice. You forget how to stand up for your worth. You forget that respect, the kind that lasts, can only be commanded by those who first respect themselves. That is the brutal reality. The world doesn't owe you kindness, and it doesn't reward silence. It respects strength. It respects boundaries. And it will test both until you prove you have them. So draw the line, speak when silence threatens your dignity, refuse when accepting means betraying yourself. Because if you don't, you will lose more than moments or opportunities. You will lose your self-respect. And that is the one thing no one can give back to you except you. The dangers of being too nice. The biggest mistake we make is thinking that kindness will protect us. We assume that if we don't hurt others, they won't hurt us. If we treat people well, they'll treat us well too. But the world doesn't work that way. The world is not a mirror of your heart, it's a test of your strength. When you're too nice, you send a signal. Not the signal you intended, one of warmth or peace, but one that says, I can be pushed. I can be used. I won't fight back. And the world, being what it is, often takes that as an invitation. Look at how people operate every day. The person at work who never says no ends up buried under other people's demands. The quiet one in a group is ignored until it's too late. The one who gives and gives finds that others only remember what they didn't do. Too much niceness doesn't create loyalty. It creates entitlement. It creates a sense that you owe more, that your boundaries don't matter. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He warned that appearances can deceive, that too much softness can be mistaken for weakness. In a world that respects strength, being too nice doesn't win hearts, it loses ground. It gives others permission to walk all over you. And this doesn't mean becoming cold or bitter. It doesn't mean shutting down compassion. It means knowing when enough is enough. 2, it means being able to say no firmly and clearly, and accepting that some people will walk away because of it. Let them. Those aren't the people you want standing beside you anyway. The biggest danger of being too nice is this: it erodes your dignity. Slowly, quietly, it turns you into someone you don't recognize. Someone afraid to stand tall, afraid to claim space, afraid to assert themselves because it might upset someone else. It teaches you to doubt yourself, to swallow words you should have said, to accept treatment you don't deserve. Machiavelli doesn't ask you to become a brute. He doesn't ask you to dominate for its own sake. He simply reminds you that strength is not cruelty. Strength is knowing your worth and defending it. Strength is knowing that if you must draw a line, you draw it clearly and you enforce it. Strength is knowing that respect is worth more than applause and dignity is worth more than being liked. In the end, too much niceness doesn't protect you from a harsh world, it delivers you to it. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. The lesson is simple, and it's one the world doesn't forget. Strength commands respect. Niceness begs for mercy. Choose wisely which path you walk. The Machiavellian truth about power. If there's one lesson that shines through every page of Machiavelli's work, it's this: power doesn't respect niceness. It respects strength. It doesn't reward obedience, humility, or quiet gestures. It bows to those who understand its nature and are bold enough to claim it. Machiavelli lived in a world of betrayal, war, and brutal politics. To him, illusions of being liked weren't worth much when swords were drawn. What mattered was loyalty, strength, and the ability to adapt. In The Prince, he reminds us of a harsh fact we often forget. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because fear is holy or cruelty is right, but because a person who can be feared can protect themselves. They can draw boundaries. They can make others think twice before crossing the line. That doesn't mean that you must become a tyrant. It doesn't mean cruelty for cruelty's sake. What it means is this: the world doesn't move for those too shy or too timid to claim their place. It doesn't recognize those too afraid to stand their ground. Power in its raw and naked form doesn't respond to wishes. It doesn't respond to apologies. It doesn't respond to niceties. It responds to strength, to conviction, and to results. Look closely at history. The names we remember weren't those who smiled and hoped for a better world. They were the ones who acted, the ones who refused to be ignored, the ones who refused to accept disrespect, the ones who refused to be used. These people weren't saints, and that's the point. They weren't trying to be liked. They weren't trying to win every heart. They were trying to win respect, win loyalty, win the moment. They understood that the world doesn't owe you a place at the table. You have to take it. Machiavelli forces us to ask ourselves a hard question. Do we want to be liked, or do we want to be respected? Do we want to be remembered for agreeing with the room or for shaping it? Do we want to be a shadow or a force? The brutal truth is that no one is going to give you strength. No one is going to walk up and hand you the respect you deserve. You have to claim it. You have to carve it out, with discipline, with boundaries, with a spine that doesn't bend every time the wind changes. The lesson is this: in a world that preys on weakness, kindness can only survive if it's protected by strength. To lead, to stand tall, you must first accept that niceness by itself will never win the game. Power is taken, respect is earned, and those who understand this rule, as Machiavelli reminds us, are the ones who write history, while the rest are forgotten. Reclaiming your power. If you've felt that sting, the sting of being ignored, used, overlooked, then you already know this. You can't wait for the world to give your worth back to you. You have to take it, you have to claim it, you have to stand up and draw that line in the sand that says, enough, no more. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean going to war with the world. It means going to war with yourself, with that voice inside that whispers, maybe if I try harder, they'll respect me. Maybe if I stay quiet, things will get better. They won't. Not until you make the decision to stand tall. Not until you accept that you owe yourself the same loyalty, the same respect that you give to others. Reclaiming your power is about knowing where you end and where the world begins. It's about knowing your worth down to your bones. It's about saying no when every part of you wants to say yes, just to keep the peace. It's about leaving spaces that were never meant for you. It's about knowing that respect, real respect, is never granted, it's taken. This doesn't mean becoming cold or bitter. It doesn't mean treating others with cruelty. It means understanding this brutal fact: you teach others how to treat you. Every word you swallow, every line you let them cross, every moment you accept less than you deserve, you are telling the world who you are and how you expect to be treated. Reclaiming your power means remembering this: the world doesn't owe you kindness. It doesn't owe you honor. Those things must be claimed, enforced, defended, first within yourself and then with others. The person who knows their worth doesn't scream for respect. They walk like it's already theirs. They don't beg for a place at the table. They build their own. It's never too late to rise. Never too late to say, I am more than this. I deserve more than this. Never too late to walk away from what doesn't honor you. Never too late to stand firm where others expect you to kneel. If you felt lost, overlooked, or used, know this: you can draw the line today. You can stand tall tonight. You can walk into the world tomorrow knowing you are worthy of more. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. Reclaiming your power is the moment you realize that no one can diminish you unless you give them permission. It's when you remember that every lion, every warrior, every person who refused to be defeated started with one quiet, burning thought. I will no longer shrink myself for the comfort of others. I will rise, I will stand, I will walk as if the world already respects me, until it does. That is how you reclaim your power. Not with anger, not with noise, not with desperation, but with strength. Calm, quiet, unshakable strength. The kind that doesn't ask permission, doesn't justify itself, doesn't wait for applause. The kind that simply knows its worth and moves forward, regardless of who chooses to walk beside it. The world doesn't reward those who beg for a seat, it respects those who claim one. So stand tall, speak clearly, walk away from what doesn't honor you. And when the world tries to test your worth, remember this. It can only take from you what you have already surrendered, so don't surrender. Not anymore, not ever. Embracing the Machiavellian warning. Machiavelli was never about cruelty for its own sake. He was about clarity. He was about seeing the world for what it is, not for what we wish it to be. And that's the lesson we must accept. Not to become heartless, not to turn cold, but to understand that strength and self-respect are not optional, they are survival. The warning is simple. The world doesn't owe you loyalty, the world doesn't owe you understanding, the world doesn't owe you a place at the table unless you claim it. Too many people walk through life hoping to be chosen, hoping to be liked, hoping that being nice will somehow win over the world. But this is how you lose yourself. This is how you forget your worth. This is how you become a shadow of the person you could have been. Machiavelli's lesson is not about cruelty. It's about knowing that respect is not granted, it is earned, it is claimed, it is protected. Not by aggression, not by harming others, but by knowing where you stand and making it clear that you will not be moved. The world doesn't respect those who bow too quickly. It respects those who stand tall when the weight of others tries to crush them. It respects those who can say no when saying yes would cost too much. It respects those who can walk away from a room that doesn't honor their worth. This is the warning, and this is the gift. You have a choice: to continue hoping for the best from a world that may never give it, or to claim the best for yourself. To rise, to stand, to walk, knowing that you deserve more, not because you demand it with cruelty, but because you carry it within you, like a flame that no one can extinguish. Machiavelli spoke truths that sting because they force us to shed the illusions we cling to, not to make us bitter, but to make us aware, to make us stronger, to make us rise. To make us remember that in a world that will test every line you draw, the person who knows their worth doesn't wait for permission to be respected. Accept this lesson. Let it sink deep. The world doesn't reward those who wait to be saved. It doesn't respect those who shrink themselves. It respects those who stand firm, who walk tall, who live by their own code and defend it with quiet strength. That is the warning, not to be cruel, not to dominate, not to destroy, but to rise as someone who knows their worth and will never apologize for it. In the end, that is the heart of the Machiavellian lesson. Not cruelty, not aggression, but strength. The strength to stand in a world that doesn't owe you kindness and remain unshaken, undiminished, unyielding. The strength to carve your path and walk it, knowing that respect is never granted. It is claimed. Embrace that warning. Let it guide you, let it steel you, let it transform you, and rise, not as a shadow, but as a force, not as a whisper, but as a voice, not as a person hoping to be noticed, but as one who refuses to be ignored. In the end, this isn't about cruelty or aggression. It's about knowing your worth, holding your ground, and rising above a world that will test every boundary you have. It's about choosing strength over silence, respect over desperation, and dignity over despair. The lesson is simple. Never shrink to fit a space that doesn't honor you. Never surrender your voice to those who won't listen. Stand tall, stand firm, stand proud. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment your thoughts, hit subscribe, and join us as we rise together.